What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk Radio. I'll be your host and producer for this episode, Logan Landers. Joining me here today is our draft savant, my co-host today, Brian LaBelle. Brian, how you doing, man? And let's talk about Jalen Royals, a guy whose name I haven't heard a whole lot of national media talk about, but someone who you should definitely keep your eye on for this upcoming NFL draft in 2025. A Georgia native, went to Powder Springs High School, went to Hillgrove High School out there in Powder Springs where he grew up, and also went to Georgia Military College for a brief stint. So if you're here in the Peach State, you should know this guy, and if you don't nationwide, well, we're here to talk to you about him today. So, Brian, what did you come away with after reading up and watching some tape on Jalen Royals, the wide receiver out of Utah State with the Aggies?
So a couple of his film breakdowns I saw were just little slants, little drag routes, whatever. And it almost looks like he's jogging. It almost looks like he's gliding, almost like he's ice skating. And he's just zooming past guys. He's fast as can be. He's got good hands. He's got good feet. I think his downside is playing at Utah State. Obviously, you're not going to get as much traction. But his numbers against Boise State this year were superb. I mean, he was maybe the best player on the field, and I think it was 9 catches, 211, and 2 touchdowns against a playoff team. Although maybe Boise didn't deserve it, that's a different conversation. But they were there, and he did nothing but produce. Very short stint though. I think I only played like 4.5 games this year, but still really good numbers. Even for just playing 4.5 games, I think he still had something like it was 55 catches, 850 yards, almost 5 TDs. Last year's numbers were superb. Also, he had 15 touchdowns. He had over 1,000 yards. Not the biggest guy in the world, and obviously he plays for a smaller school, so he's not going to get as much traction. Being right at 6 foot, but a lot of his player comps, you have him like a Cooper Kupp, maybe a Stephon Diggs, where you don't have to be 6'2" or 6'3" to play receiver anymore and be impactful because yeah, if you got the hands, which he does, you got the route running, which he does, you get the speed, which he does. I mean, why not?
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who was a track star in high school. I mean,
Yeah.
he was super athletic. He had a 6'4" in the high jump, for God's sake. So, I mean, just just raw athleticism. I mean, when you look at him, I mean, he comes in, he's going to have about 4'3", 4'4" for his 40. I mean, he might have the fastest time come the combine. We'll see here in a little while. But, I mean, he's 6', 205. So he's not super small or anything. He's got a good frame on him. Yes, he can be a little bit undersized, but he's not 185 or 170 like we see some of these guys at the wide receiving spot. But definitely someone to watch out for. And like you said, had a very just kind of lackluster in a way start to his college career. Went to JUCO college and Georgia Military College, and then played there for a little while, and then transferred to Utah State. And then, man, he just came out onto the scene, right? Redshirted in 22, 23. He broke the school record for 15 touchdowns. I mean, he had 71 catches for over 1,000 yards. But this is a guy who has big play potential, Brian. 15.2 yards per catch in 23. He had 7 touchdowns of over 50-plus yards, led the nation. And like I said, in his best game in 23 was against UConn, 185 yards, 3 touchdowns, including one for 71 yards. It was on the first team All Mountain West in that year. He had a touchdown in 9 of his last 10 games. Like I said, he did get hurt this past year, which is unfortunate. It caused him to miss the for most of the season, pretty much. Got hurt in, I believe, October. So it's unfortunate he didn't get his full shine this year, but it's someone who has just got just burning speed, right? Obviously, he was a track star. He's got good catching ability, too. You don't see him drop a whole lot of passes. He can make the big plays if you need him to. If you just throw it to him, he can get up there and jump for it. But where I think he's going to just really exceed, I think, is either, like you said, either in slants, where it's just quick, get it to him and watch him run, or if you need a big chunk of yardage, if he's in man coverage, it's pretty much done for. Because he can just flat out outrun whoever the cornerback is 9 times out of 10. And he's got really good hands and a good leaping ability to where if you throw it to him high, he's not afraid to get up there and pull it on down. I think this is just maybe a hidden gem for wide receivers in this draft.
You gotta be careful saying hidden gem because there's a lot of the draft savants. There's a lot of the scouts that are very much like, hey, we like these kind of players for that reason. I think It's going to depend on usage. I think a coordinator or a coach is going to have to break down his film at Utah State and say, okay, where was he the best? Like you said, he's very good in slants, very good on drag routes, very good quick routes, and maybe take it over the top. When you're fast and you have good footwork and you have good hands, you could do just about anything. If he was 6'3", I think we'd be talking day one easily, maybe top
Mm-hmm.
15 just based on his numbers. But I don't think he'd be at Utah State if he was 6'3" either. So I think the Aggies nation is happy that maybe, hey, this is a guy that slipped through the cracks in college. But you can never have enough receivers. That's one thing in the NFL. Guys go down all the time. Guys can't stay healthy. Having guys that can play in the slot, play everywhere. I think he could do a little bit of both. It's hard to see him being a first round, a second round pick, like you said, because there's a lot of talent up near the top, especially as far as defense. And you got, maybe the SEC, the Big Ten guys are going to command a lot of the attention. But, a comp that I had for him was another Mountain West guy who ended up going to Dallas a while back, was Michael Gallup. A lot of catches, a lot of yards, came onto the scene despite playing for a smaller school. Did an okay job at the next level. Gallup did. Obviously we'll wait and see for Royals. But, if he has one of those combines where it's like, oh, hey, 4'3", 240, people are going to be talking about him. His name, he's going to shoot up. That's just how it was. I think it was John Ross a couple of years ago, probably got a little overdrafted, the same thing. If you have speed, they're going to try to find a spot for you. And he's got it. So, it remains to be seen. But I think this guy, like you said, hidden gem, could very well be a very productive player at the next level.
Yeah, I think just my final thoughts. I think he'll be a guy who, if he does show out the combine, if he does get a lot of buzz, he could maybe bump up to a day 2 pick. But I think he'll slide in there day 3 if he drops, which I don't think he will. But anywhere from, I would range day 2 to day 4, just any of those rounds there. I don't think he goes any lower than that because, like you said, he's going to have this tremendous speed. Some areas he needs to improve on. He's not going to be the best blocker, obviously, as a wide receiver, just because of his smaller frame. And he doesn't run the most complex routes, right? He runs just very simple routes. Streaks, corners, slants, very, very easy. You're not going to see him doing a whole lot of, hitch and goes or anything along those lines. He could maybe develop those over time because, like I said, he did play for a smaller school, and Utah State didn't play against obviously the best in terms of competition. You mentioned the one against Boise State, but that was pretty much, their best opponent throughout his whole tenure. But I think that when whoever drafts this guy, I don't think he's going to be, a star wide receiver off the rip, but someone that, maybe if your star receiver is getting double teamed, this is a guy who could go for, a couple catches for 100 yards, get you a nice big touchdown here or there. I think he has a lot of the really good playmaking abilities, but like you said, it just depends on scheme and who can utilize his speed, his athleticism the best. But I think that he'd be a great fit with any roster. That's the thing with wide receivers is that you can go pretty much anywhere. Everyone needs you too. You always need wide receivers. So I think that whoever scoops him up a little bit later in the draft can get a really good player as long as you maximize his potential, which I think a lot of teams can do. So I'm expecting a lot from Jalen Royals. Like I said, guy out of Powder Springs. So all of us here, we're filming live out of Atlanta. So we're hoping the best for him. Went to Hillgrove. So we hope that he gets drafted, does great in the league like we do all the Georgia players. But we'll see what happens to him, man. But like I said, unfortunately, he got hurt this year. If he didn't, man, I feel like he really would have maybe got to a day 2. Really jumped up some, but it is what it is. You just got to brush past it and, just say, hey, this was my college career. Let's go to the league now and see what we can do. Jalen Royals, best of luck to you in your NFL draft journey. Once again, for Brian LaBelle, my co-host today, appreciate you, Brian, coming on the show, talking about Jalen Royals, the wide receiver out of Utah State, represent the Aggies. I've been your host and producer, Logan Landers. If you enjoy the episode, everyone, like, follow, share, subscribe. Also, go download our podcast, as you can see at the very bottom there, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast. We are there each and every single week. Once again, go and download that as well. Until next time, we'll talk to y'all again on another